Season 9 of Formula E racing was a historical season, jam-packed with an incredible amount of unforgettable moments. And in this video, we aim to share our top 10 most memorable moments. Number 10. Jake Dennis announces his arrival in dominant style. The opening race of the 9th season had a lot riding on it. It was the debut of the Gen 3 cars. Defending champions Mercedes had left the sport and questions were being asked about the viability of the sport. The brilliant opening race in Mexico City allayed all these fears. The Gen 3 cars proved to be good, and Jake Dennis driving an Andretti finally broke through to the front to establish himself as one of the major protagonists of the 9th season. Despite having to contend with a safety car restart, Dennis eventually won the race by a dominant 8 seconds. More importantly, the race was fun and interesting, once again proving detractors wrong. Formula E was here to stay. Number 9. Pascal Verline's meteoric rise and anticlimactic fall. After Jake's dominant performance in the season opener, the new worry associated with the sport was if it would become a one-horse race. Pascal Verline put those worries to rest by winning the next 2 races. Verline had been one of the most underrated drivers in Formula E, and many fans felt that he was finally getting his due. However, he had one major chink in his armour: his inconsistency in qualifying. During the first half of the season, it wasn't a big deal as Porsche had one of the best cars in the field and it covered up Verline's shortcomings. This wouldn't last though, as the others would sort their issues out and Pascal's championship charge would fizzle out as he would drop from leading the championship at the halfway point to a nondescript 4th by the end of it. Number 8. The Mahindra Debacle. This should have been a proud year for fans of Formula E in India as the Hyderabad E-Prix made its debut on the calendar. However, some of that shine was taken off by the embarrassment suffered by Indian team Mahindra at the very next race in Cape Town. Almost all the teams were dealing with minor niggles, but Mahindra took things to a new low when all 4 cars powered by them had to be withdrawn from the race in South Africa due to concerns over their rear suspension. While this wasn't the best showcase of Formula E, all the issues were fixed by the very next race, proving to fans that this wasn't a sport that swept issues under the rug. Instead, they were tackled head-on. Number 7. Home glory for apt Cupra. There's something about competing on home soil that brings out the best in teams, and apt Cupra highlighted this perfectly at the home race in Berlin. The German team had essentially become the backmarkers of the 9th season, and no one expected much from them, despite it being their home race. However, the unpredictability of the first wet qualifying for the Gen 3 cars and some brilliantly brave performances from their drivers, Robin Freins and Nico Müller, allowed them to lock out an emotional front row. While they would have a forgettable race, their underdog performance in qualifying left many fans with a smile. Number 6. Rome throws up an ugly surprise. Given the narrow confines of the racetracks used in Formula E, the propensity of crashes occurring is very high. Yet the incredible racecraft of the talented drivers in the sport ensures that there aren't many more crashes than those seen in other forms of motorsport. However, every once in a while a race takes place when massive crashes are inevitable. For the 9th season, the highlight race in this regard was the Rome E-Prix. On lap 10, a multi-car collision would lead to one of the biggest pile-ups in the sport's history. When it was all said and done, 6 cars would retire on the spot, but what made it a memorable moment for Formula E fans was the fact that despite the magnitude of the crash, all the drivers involved walked away relatively unscathed, highlighting the incredible safety standards of Formula E. Number 5. Maximilian Gunter's heartwarming win in Jakarta. One of the criticisms of Formula E during the early days was that a significant number of the drivers had cut their teeth in other forms of motorsports, and Formula E was something they did in their twilight years. However, this notion has not only been challenged, but emphatically debunked by the many homegrown talents that are on par with the best racing drivers from other racing categories. And Maximilian Gunter is considered by many to be the best among such drivers. He's beloved by fans, and he paid them back beautifully in Jakarta. He was in the form of his life, qualifying on pole for both races, and while he couldn't win in the first race, he was unflappable during the second to take one of the most popular wins of the 9th season. Number 4. Rookie Sasha Fenestraz sets the fastest lap in Formula E history. Speaking about the next generation of talent, a new one burst onto the scenes in the form of Sasha Fenestraz. Sasha had been quiet during his debut season last year, and while his second season wasn't too impressive in terms of the championship, he did show flashes of brilliance in qualifying. The best of these came in Cape Town, when he not only took pole, but he also broke the all-time lap record of Formula E. His time of 1 minute 7.848 seconds at an average speed of 154.987 km per hour was the fastest lap in the sport's history. While Sasha couldn't make the most of it, he proved that the future of the sport is very bright. Number 3. The chaotic Berlin E-Prix. If a new fan wishes to see how much fun can be had in a Formula E race, then all they need to do is watch the highlights of the 2023 Berlin E-Prix. Fans were left breathless at the end of it, and those who witnessed this masterpiece will talk about it for years to come. It had everything that makes for a legendary race. Overtake galore, 190 of them. The lead changed a record-breaking 20 times with an unprecedented 8 different drivers leading the race at some point. When it was all said and done, Jaguar's TCS Racing's Mitch Evans and Sam Bird, 2 of the fan favourites, took an unforgettable 1-2. To top things off, this magnificent race also brought things a lot closer in the championship. Number 2. London's fitting finale. By now, it should be clear that this was no ordinary season in Formula E and could very well go down in history as a major turning point for the sport. As such, it needed a fitting conclusion, and the double header in London provided that and some more. The title was on the line, and it was a certainty that a first-time champion would be crowned in either Nick Cassidy or Jake Dennis, both very popular with the fans. The first race started in a relatively calm manner, with Cassidy leading the race only for disaster to strike when he damaged his front wing and had to pull into the pits despite not wanting to. There was high drama in the pit lane, with the cameras unwittingly capturing some of the rawest moments of frustration ever seen in the sport. The second race of the London E-Prix was comparatively sedate, as Cassidy won, but it was already too late. One man's loss is another man's gain, which brings us to what we think is the number 1 fan favourite moment: Jake Dennis's emotional title win. The tragedy for Nick Cassidy meant that Jake Dennis had the golden opportunity to become the first ever British Formula E champion if he managed to finish 3rd or higher in the first race in London. He did one better, as he took 2nd behind Mitch Evans to seal one of the most celebrated championships in Formula E history. Jake had been one of the standout talents of the sport ever since he made his debut during the 7th season. It didn't come easy though, as he had to maneuver around multiple tricky situations, including 2 red flags in the title decider in London. However, like all great champions, he kept his cool and became one of the most adored champions not just in Formula E history, but all of motorsport.